Men, you are losing the fight. Over 80% of you should listen to this podcast to find out what you are losing and how not to lose anymore, all on Follow Your Beauty. Hi, I'm Dr. John Mendelson, Medical Director of the Advanced Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center. And today we're going to talk about hair loss, hair restoration modalities, treatments. And we brought Josh back to the show. Josh.
Hello.
Everybody knows Josh. Thank you, Josh. And Josh, who did you bring with you today?
You know, I thought I'd bring along this guy over here. Some people call him Marky Mark.
Yeah, we're joined at the hip. We go everywhere together.
So actually, I brought Mark to the show today.
Oh, okay.
Mark is not just a client. He's the director of the hair loss division here at Advanced. And so Mark is here not just because he's an expert in the area, but he's also a patient. And we're going to hear a little bit about both of their stories today. We're going to cover this. We're going to talk about non-surgical and surgical treatments for hair loss. We have done a segment before, a rhinoplasty segment with Josh that was fairly long. This one's going to be a little bit long too. We've got a lot to cover, but I would like our listeners and viewers to know virtually everything there is to know about hair loss and what they can do for it. And thought this might have been the easiest way. So Josh, if we could start with you, tell me a little bit about your hair loss. When did you start noticing your hair loss, and what were you thinking at the time?
Just started noticing my forehead kept receding. Probably in my later 20s, and then it just kind of progressed. And then Mark kept reminding me that I was thin every time I visited your office. I just made that up. No, but him being here and you offering that, I started definitely inquiring.
So what had you done, if anything, to try to slow that down or fix it? And we'll talk about non-surgical treatments for now.
Yeah, well, I prayed. I took supplements, so your typical biotin. I did your propecia, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I did everything you could do.
Okay, so how did that work for you? Any of those things?
I mean, none of it is going to make you grow hair like surgery can. So I wasn't happy.
All right. Well, Mark, I'd like to turn to you for a moment. And so it would be nice to hear your story. So obviously, I know that you started losing your hair and seeking some help for it back in actually when you were Josh's age, when he did, in your 20s, I believe. So maybe you could share a little bit about what you noticed back in the day. You were from Louisville, and you were losing your hair, and tell us a little bit about what was going on then.
Well, he and I are on two different sides of the planet. I mean, he still had hair to save, and we were able to do that with laser. If I had had laser treatments back in the day, I could have saved myself a lot of heartache, but I had gone completely bald, So I spent a lot of time, a large amount of time that I was in school on trying to figure out what to do when I got out of school. What did I want to do with my life? And the only thing I could really think about was I didn't want to lose my hair any more than what I already did. So I spent a lot of time researching, like most people do, and I've done, hair pieces. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done Rogaine. I've done propecia. And I finally wanted my own growing hair back, but back in the day, my biggest fear was the plugs, the dreaded plugs, the
Looking
Barbie
so
doll.
obvious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back then, the state-of-the-art procedure was strip. Now that's kind of a dinosaur, but so that's where I started.
So you're well, before we get to what you finally did, talk about Rogaine, propecia, and you both can jump in here. But what are they supposed to do, and what sorts of effects did either of you see from them?
Well, I had no sex drive, so for a young man, propecia, it totally cut that off. I didn't care about sex at all. It was weird. So I did not like that side effect. And I don't know if everyone gets that, but they do state that.
It happened to me as well.
Yeah. So that's not fun.
I was on it for 5 years, and all of a sudden I woke up and it hit me.
Wow. So, Mark, my understanding is that then you went back on propecia and didn't have the side effects Is that correct? Or
No, once I had the side effects, I came off of it completely, and luckily everything came back normal.
Okay. Oh, all right. I've always been under the understanding actually that you
But
were
a
successful.
lot of people are on it and they don't have the side effects. So we typically tell them, great, if you don't have it, then by all means stay on it. But again, there's things out there that we can do. There's modalities out there that we can do now that doesn't have any side effects, which I find more attractive.
So you also mentioned hair pieces, and tell me about that. You've done some things non-surgically over the years, so maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about what that involved and what that's like.
Yeah, as a young guy sitting in my mom and dad's basement watching TV, whatever that Chicago channel was, I saw an ad for a guy who said, "I'm not only the I better not go into that," but it was an ad for hair replacement, and it looked wonderful. I rented a car, had a credit card, drove all the way to Chicago, and I didn't. They weren't quite clear as to what I was really getting into and the expense. So it was a little bit shocking when they brought out this basically toupee, if you will. I wasn't mentally ready to accept that. I thought I was getting something else, so that didn't quite work out too well. And I always wanted my own growing hair back. And once I got comfortable with the fact I wasn't going to get plugged up, it was an easy decision.
So you're a young kid sitting in your parents' basement, see an ad come on, you're losing your hair, trying to figure out what's going on in the world, right, for you. Go to Chicago. Yep. And so did you ever move in that direction? You wore that hair piece, didn't you?
Yeah, I felt in order to be successful, I needed hair. You go visit a banker. A lot of times bankers have a full head of hair for whatever reason. I felt like I needed that hair to give me the edge, which in reality I didn't. But as a young guy, it seemed like everybody else was losing their hair. I was the only one that was balding, if you will. But yeah, I did that. I'd already invested a lot of money. I wasn't just gonna. So I took a week off work, let them put it on me, and there's just nothing like your own growing hair.
So tell me about that though. So now you're wearing this. How did you feel after you had a full head of hair right away?
Well, I mean it's pretty shocking.
Yeah, I'm trying not to laugh. But
no, go
imagine.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I took a week off. I was working at a Fortune 500 company, and it was a pretty rough environment. A lot of Teamsters I was involved in, and I didn't want to get made fun of. So I took a week off and went and had it done, and had a week to get used to it. I went to some places where nobody knew me, and nobody really looked at me the wrong way. I mean, it was. So I had my confidence up after having a week off work. And then I went back in, and to my amazement, the only ones that really questioned what I had done were the people that were thinning. And but that experience made me want to be in the industry. I liked, helping people. I liked helping people improve their appearance. I didn't really like the tools that they used on me to get me to do it. I wanted to be more honest, but it turned out to be a good move.
So tell me just a little bit about, because frankly, even though I've been in the hair business for a long time, I've learned a lot from you in terms of really what, not just what men go through, but what happens with this. So tell me how those are placed, how frequently they need to be changed, a little bit about it.
Well, I wanted to be as natural as possible, and it's expensive. But you want to look natural, and some guys they didn't want to spend the money to look good, and so they would have these hair pieces made so thick, the material was so thick, it was literally like a burlap bag sitting on your head, and they always had to put a lot of hair in there, so you always had this big thick looking head of hair, and that isn't always natural when you age. So in order to make that look good, you really have to, today they're really like a thin layer of polyurethane. It's like a second layer of skin. And it's like a contact lens, disposable contact lenses. You could, a lot of times twice a week or twice a month, they're replacing these. And so it's nothing unusual to spend, $500, $600, $700 a month in maintenance. and they replace the hair ever so often. And if you don't have any perimeter hair for a hair transplant and you want hair, if you do it right, that is still a good option. But the hair really needs to be replaced often to keep looking good. Otherwise, it looks artificial.
Okay, so from there, actually, let's talk a little bit about sticking with some non-surgical treatments. You had alluded to what you would do today to sort of hold on to hair, and we talk about laser light-based therapies.
Yeah, we started looking at lasers back in 97, 98, and they were these big hair dryer looking devices, and you basically would sit under them for 30 minutes. But these certain devices, we could never really get them to work properly. We never really saw a result. But probably around 2004, we found out about these devices called Luce, these laser clinical units, and we had them imported from Italy, and lo and behold, they worked. And it typically took about 4 months to start seeing some. I think you were shocked. You started hearing good feedback, but the negative to it was $3,500 a year, and you had to come here 3 times a week for the rest of your life. And as long as you did that, we could solve your hair problem. It would stop the hair loss and encourage regrowth. Years later, a company a group of doctors and scientists out of Cleveland, Ohio, came up with a device called the original LaserCap, and that basically put our clinical units out of business. I think you and I disposed of the last one in the dumpster not too many years ago. So now they're a portable device. That's how Josh and I started talking. He was getting treated for Botox, I believe, one day, and
Yes.
you expressed your hair was thinning, and we scoped you. We had a scope where we ran through his hair just to kind of see what was going on, and he had a lot of miniaturized hairs. And that's typically what happens when you have heredity type hair loss. Every time you lose a hair, the one that grows back is weaker and finer than the one that fell out. So these lasers turn those weak miniaturized hairs back into a good, strong, growing hair. So we were able to stabilize Josh, thicken things up, and solved that part of the issue. But then, obviously, he wanted more. He had areas where he didn't have any hair whatsoever, so lasers are not going to manufacture a new follicle, so that's when he chose to do SmartGraft, which we can get to later.
Yes, and we will. So I want to just add a few comments. So these light-based or laser-based therapies, basically, all they're doing really is they're encouraging new blood vessels, additional blood flow to the scalp, so that these miniaturized hairs that Mark is referring to have more nutrients to grow. And you'll also see throughout the scalp, you'll see the existing hair actually look stronger and thicker as well. And so this isn't, if you come in and you don't have any hair follicle there, laser obviously isn't going to work. This is for young men typically. It's for everybody, but if people don't want surgery, it works well for men who are receding, losing hair. You have to have some hair follicles. And it works very well. How does it work for women?
Oh, it's a lifesaver. It's a lifeline. A lot of times when the women come in, their hair loss is totally different than the men. Like Josh and I, we were thinning on top, but we were able to keep the hair on the sides and the back, which are genetically predispositioned to never fall out. With women, the hair loss is typically diffused, meaning they're losing it all over. So we really can't rely on that hair to use with SmartGraft because it's liable to fall out later on in life. So lasers have just really solved a lot of the women's issues.
So we're going to talk about SmartGraft in a minute, but for those people who don't know what SmartGraft is, it's a surgical procedure. Right now we'll just call them hair transplants. And what Mark is saying is if you're thin and diffuse, in men, we have the occipital and the temporal area that commonly don't fall out. So we'll recede from the top, we'll recede in this frontal temporal area. So when we borrow hair from this area, this is the donor hair, we move it to the recipient area, the area we want, we place it in the right direction and so forth, it grows. I mean, 99% it grows quite well. And in fact, the hair transplanted hair won't ever fall out. What continues to happen is there will be additional thinning for men along the way, and we can replace more hair. For women, This diffuse thinning, it's different. If we borrow hair from this area, it's not reliable, as Mark just said. We transplant it, and we do sometimes, but we don't know if that hair is predispositioned to fall out along the way. And so that's a disadvantage for women. But fortunately, what we found is
with these laser and light-based therapies, I mean, it really is amazing. When we first started using the Luce, I mean, I remember like the first 3 or 4 patients. I mean, I looked at you like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. This thing works.
And it really does. And so obviously they've come a long way. They're portable. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But so currently, you like the LaserCap.
Yeah, and I just want to say, you know, we can help a lot of people, but it's hard, you know, when a person comes in off the street that might not really know about how good your reputation is. They come in, we examine their hair, and then we recommend a LaserCap to them. And that you got to have a lot of trust to follow us on that, and we realize that. You can go online. There's a zillion different laser products out online. And so someone could go and read a review, and someone might say, well, I've tried a laser and I didn't get any. And people believe that. Because if it's online, it's true, right? That's the way it works. But in reality, you know, we're not going to offer anything to someone if we don't feel like we're getting good results, especially with your reputation. So it just takes a little bit of faith.
Well,
but
the industry is a little bit hokey,
It
and
is.
I've shared that with you.
well, just like they treated me when my early research. I mean, you really it made you very guarded, and I think men are guarded anyway.
Right, and yeah, it's hard to believe. For women, I want to simplify this right now. For women, one of the main modalities that we use are the lasers, period. Doesn't mean we can't transplant, we do sometimes. For men, it's laser, and it's a technique that we're going to talk about in a moment, a type of hair transplant. There aren't a lot of options. In our practice currently, years ago, Mark, when you first joined us in this hair area, in this division, from your personal views, you wouldn't allow patients to leave without propecia Rogaine. Today, we don't even recommend them. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. We know where we can achieve results, and if somebody wants to go that route, that's fine. But the patients that we're seeing are usually people who have failed other modalities anyway.
Exactly. If it's not easy, people aren't going to do it.
Okay, so let's move to your let's move to where you got more involved from replacing your own hair. That was your goal. We've expressed that a few times, and maybe to do that, I'm going to walk through the procedure. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to show is Mark's procedure. This might be a little bit graphic. This is called the strip method. It's still a method that's used very commonly. It's a method that works very well. And we'll talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of it. So there's Mark. We're localizing it. We've talked enough on the show about lidocaine and epinephrine. The scalp is very vascular. We don't move this fast. It's sped up. But we mark and remove that strip of hair from the back that you saw. And then we've got a team that's dissecting these into tiny little follicular units. And we start putting them in a petri dish, and just hours and hours go by. It's very tedious. But it really works beautifully. So what we're showing here is the recipient area being prepared. Make a little hole, and those are the little grafts that are being moved and placed into in this case, it's Mark's frontal temporal hairline here. So one at a time. Now, back in the day, we used to do some paraffin wax, and Mark is high maintenance, so we need to do things. I think he had his pedicure at the same time. But there's a photo.
Wow.
Of Mark. Look at that wild hair.
I don't think we should have shown that. That's wow.
But
had a lot of filler.
Yeah.
So, but more importantly, I mean, if you look at the before photo here, this is Mark. I don't know how old you were there, but so he was losing his hair, and what he expressed earlier, the reason his hair loss was different from Josh's is he was just further along in it. There's a classification. We won't get into that now, but Mark was further advanced with his hair loss. He didn't have any hair there. He's got some wild hair in this
That's
photo.
what you call fried, dyed, and laid to the side, I do believe. Going from Fred Sanford.
So Mark's all about big hair. He's into the 70s, 80s music, and whatever. But anyway, let's get back here. So that's a strip method that we just went through. It works well. There really aren't any problems with it. But Mark, tell us what you didn't like about that.
I'm telling you, I'm at a loss for words from looking at that photo there. But well, at the time, that was leading edge technology. I was happy as I could be just to, have hair regardless of the way they extracted it. But, looking back now at what Josh has had done compared to what I had done, I've got scars in the back of my head. I can only keep my hair so short. But yeah, I'm at a loss for words. I think you kind of caught me off guard here a little bit. But yeah, it's things that we're doing today are much more user-friendly, very, very little downtime, no scalpels, no sutures. It's an amazing procedure.
So there have been some advances. So this strip method is a very traditional, standard method, and only over the last 5 years or so are we've got robots and things that don't work very well, but we have devices that help us extract hair. So one of the things, if you came in, and Josh, let's say you're coming in and you said, hey, I'd like to do this hair transplant, we say, okay. And you probably are saying, well, geez, if I'm gonna do this, just move as much hair as you can. Well, with that method that we just showed you with Mark, you can move a lot of hair very quickly. We've got team members who are experts at doing this sort of thing. We can move large volumes at one time. Granted, these procedures take 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. They're all day long. Okay, it's just very tedious. And so, Josh, I want to turn to you for a minute. So you've had how many hair transplants?
2.
Okay. And so the first hair transplant you had, do you know what we call it?
Follicular unit extraction.
Love
Very
it.
good.
Okay, so it's called FUE, follicular unit extraction. And so as we were transitioning, rather than having scars in the back of Mark's head, even though they typically heal well, and Mark, we're going to come back to you. Actually, I'm going to do this right now. So with some of these methods, Mark has had multiple hair transplants in his lifetime. In fact, where have we borrowed hair from in the past?
Recently, we took a little off my chest.
Okay, so with some of the newer techniques, we can borrow it from other areas. His scalp is tight, and his scar is stretched a little bit, and this is what he's concerned about. And this is why he's saying he needs to wear his hair at a certain length to cover that. Obviously, he's got hair. I think he's pretty happy with it. But these are things that we can avoid today. So Josh, you were one of the patients who came in, and because your hair loss was early, we were comfortable at the time performing FUE, knowing that we were going to transfer probably less hair than we could with a method that we did with Mark, at least at the time. So why don't we take a look at the FUE procedure, your follicular unit extraction. And again, this will kind of remind you of what you went through. What you can see here, though, is Josh's hairline, his receding hairline. You can see our markings. We're trying to bring the frontal temporal hairline down that low. If there's any disadvantage, we've shaved his head. It's not that big a deal, but I do find, well, even the way you're wearing your hair today, maybe we gave you a new style. But we do have some men complain or worry or find an excuse that they don't want their head shaved. Obviously, the hair grows back, but that's where we're borrowing the hair from. So unlike Mark's strip method, Josh's first procedure was this FUE, and what we were doing then was manually removing each of those individual hairs and then replacing them. It worked beautifully. My only objection at the time during the transition was for those individuals who wanted more hair moved, we just couldn't do it. It was physically limiting in terms of and time limiting. So for those individuals, we were still doing the strip method. We were doing both, okay? But you were a good candidate. Today, so talk about your last hair transplant and tell us a little bit about that, Josh.
Well, we went in the second time just to get it, the thickness that I more desired, and I had results within, I would say, 6 months. My hair started growing, and since I was using the cap, the laser cap, it almost, I think it sped up the time of growing, made it grow in possibly quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, between the two things that you said, using the laser cap, so we've got a good environment for hair transplant, and also with this method that we're going to discuss here called SmartGraft, we do see that commonly. We still tell patients that they won't have any hair growth for probably at least 3 to 4 months. It might start around 4 months. Really, as we get more 6 to 8 months out is where they should start to notice something. And we stick to that, and that's the expectation we set. But you, like many, we've seen earlier results, and so we've been thrilled with it. And because you didn't have the prior procedure, you can't really compare a strip versus this. But from our perspective, I want to run through what SmartGraft is here with with some live footage from Josh's surgery. So we've numbed the area up. Josh, you're laying on your stomach. We call that prone. And this is SmartGraft. And so it's an instrument. It's a device that helps us suction the hairs from the scalp. And you can see them going into the little tube there. And it's going to be collected in an area that keeps the proper humidity and temperature so that these don't desiccate, they don't dry out, and that they remain viable or living. So we'll show another view here. I think we get a little close-up here where you can see that little hair being kind of suctioned right up in there. That little yellowish tissue that you see is a little bit of subcutaneous fat. The graft is pretty clean. Go ahead, Barb.
I was just noticing it's amazing. You really don't have to go very deep because of the suction. If you didn't have the suction there, you'd have to go much deeper than that.
Right, and so to the point earlier that hair grows faster, I think that with the strip method that we used to use, we don't want to injure any blood vessels, but sometimes they are. And by disrupting the blood flow to the scalp, there's this thing called telogen effluvium where you can actually kind of shock the hair and you might lose some hair. But besides that, all of those blood vessels kind of need to reintegrate, right? They need to regrow. And I think that's why very consistently we didn't see results for at least 6 to 8 months, at least the hair growing. So that's one of the reasons. So, in terms of, a very atraumatic way to perform this, I mean, you can see it's pretty amazing. This next video here, you'll see actually some of the hair is being placed here. I'm going to, there's some steps in between, and there's Josh just talking to me.
One thing I want to say is on that initial photo of Josh where he kind of had the mohawk, Josh is just a free spirit. Not everybody has to get their hair cut that short. The way Josh has got his hair right there would be pretty acceptable to come in and get a procedure done. So everyone out there in the viewing land, that you don't have to get a mohawk if you don't want to.
That is true. I think your hair was orange or purple.
Something like that, yeah.
It's been all of above. Yeah.
I can't remember.
It's been every color.
I can't keep up.
But that was current. Now it's a little dated.
This is just another view here. I want to move. I think I want to show. Let me see what I've done here. What I want to show. So here's a close-up view of what's going on. So you can see the SmartGraft working. Those hairs just one at a time, just being suctioned and removed. So that's the extraction area. We don't do anything really to treat that area. We don't need to. Those little tiny punches will heal very quickly, and there shouldn't be any issues there. So that's what SmartGraft looks like. Talk to me a little bit about your recovery. It sounds like the recovery was similar for both of them, but tell me about the recovery from this FUE, from the SmartGraft procedure.
Do you want me to be honest?
Sure.
Okay, so this will hurt.
Well, don't say that.
So this does hurt.
I've never had a strip method.
I can only imagine. I compare it to maybe like a frying pan on your head.
Okay.
Okay. And I think maybe that's because of them sucking the hairs from the back, the sides, and then punching it in the front. So your entire head has been affected. So
I do want to add this a little bit. I do want to say that Josh is the one who took Percocet for 3 weeks, so most people only take Tylenol. But go ahead, Josh. I want to turn it back over to you.
You're saying pain and discomfort could be subjective, maybe?
Anyway, go ahead. I won't interrupt you.
So I think that definitely take your pain pills, that's prescribed. That will definitely help out. So the pain is definitely I felt that. But it's worth it.
And how long did that last?
Not that long. It starts to scab, and then you have kind of an ugly stage or a gross feeling stage because you have this peeling, oozing perhaps, coming from all those little wounds.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a process.
It's a process. You have to,
and,
but it's well worth it.
Yeah, well,
if you are balding or bald, it's so worth it. I mean,
tell us about 10, 11, 12, 13 days. Tell us what happens during the transition when what you just said sort of begins to go away.
Yeah. So the you go from having little bloody dots from the incisions to its scabbing, and then I would say 10 to 12 days, it's going to flake off just like a typical scab would. And then the same thing for where they extracted the hairs from the back, you'll have little tiny scabs, and you'll be tempted to just pick and pick and pick. I noticed them itching because when things are healing, sometimes you feel that sensation of itching, and so you want to pick. I wanted to pick, and I did. I picked and picked. I'm a picker. I picked all those scabs I couldn't handle having, but they don't recommend doing that. So, however, it didn't harm my regrowth, and the pain leaves rather quickly. It doesn't stay forever. I mean, it just is the first few days after your surgery, and then as long as you take your medication, your pain medication, you should be fine. I honestly think I didn't take it the first day, and then I woke up from a nap and was in pain because I didn't have any.
Yeah,
help.
well, it's a lot. It's a large surface area. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot going on there. We would expect some.
Can you show slide 91 real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one right there. So that's what Dr. Mendelsohn did to me. This is the one on top, and I believe you didn't even use anesthesia on me, right? No lidocaine, nothing, and
right.
I got through it.
That's 'cause you're
no
tough.
problems. I'm the Wolverine.
So with the photo that we're looking at, that Mark is right. That the photo at the top is showing after we've removed the strip, and so all of that good stuff that we removed had hair follicles, and those are dissected, and you can see that we typically use surgical clips or sutures to close that, to take tension off of it, and so the hair grows back around it. Sometimes if there's too much tension when we used to do this, you could lose a little bit of hair in that area. So you can see the scar on the upper right side. Josh, what you were just describing is this FUE method where you've got all these little donor areas where the punches are. In the middle there, it's a little bit crusting and flaking and probably itching, and then eventually, obviously, the hair grows. Well, Mark, let's start with you. What has hair restoration done for you, for your confidence, for your work?
Wow, it did everything. I mean, I just didn't want to be bald. I didn't really care how I got my hair back. I just didn't want to be bald, and I've been able to wound up meeting you as well, and working with you every day is a pretty good thing. So it turned out, life handed me a lemon, and I made lemonade out of it. Is the way I look at it.
Well, there you go. Well, I think your hair looks great. I mean, I think anybody looking at you and looking at the photo that you saw before would say, "Wow."
Well, especially the Sammy Hagar one.
Right. I know.
I
You like that. I think that's what you looked like when I met you. So.
Something like that.
And Josh, what about you?
Well, I got married. I'm just playing. I'm playing. Yeah, definitely confidence. Confidence. Whenever it's one of the worst things to go bald. It makes you feel less than, and so having a head full of hair, and also being in the beauty industry, I was constantly looked at, and they look at your hair. And my husband does hair, of all things, so that made me very self-conscious. So to have hair again, yeah, I feel younger, and I look better and younger, and yeah.
Well, good. Well, you do look great. You'll have that hair forever. I do want to mention Steven, seeing as you brought him up. So this is just a little story. So years ago, obviously, I met Josh, met Steven, and so I've got my hair, and Steven thought it would be a good idea. Somehow talked me into relaxing my hair. I get my hair cut every 15 months, maybe. Okay, and so I'm sitting there. An hour goes by, an hour and a half. I guess I have a relaxant or something on my head. So I'm sitting in Steven's chair. All of a sudden, he turns me around. He spins me around. And I go, oh, my God, I look like Kenny G. My hair's like, yeah, I did. I'm looking at him. So anyway, Mark, you were right. I mean, at that point, I remember, because I was in the middle of the day, I ran over to the salon, came back. I was still working. I think I hid out. I was wearing a ponytail for a while, which was fine. But my hair was long. It was really the first time in my life where I kind of related to hair issues. So I'm not sure I'm going to see Steven again. Not that he doesn't do great work. That just might not be for me. I don't know about that.
I heard from your wife that you cried.
I didn't cry, but I didn't cry.
So she's not. She's
well,
embellishing.
Anyway. Well, you can ask her. You can believe anything you want, Mark.
All right.
So anyway, all right. So So as a quick summary here, we talked about non-surgical modalities. Basically, we use laser. The LaserCap is something that most women would probably benefit from with hair loss or who want to improve the thickness of their hair. Many men benefit from it as well. If you look like Mark and you've lost all that hair and you want a head of hair, we have to do some sort of hair transplant. Today's preferred modality is FUE with SmartGraft, as opposed to the strip method, so that we don't have scars. It's really quite nice. But that's all I have to say about hair. Is there any final thoughts you guys have?
Hair is good.
Hair is where it's at. Yeah.
All right, very profound. Thanks, Josh. So anyway, stay with us for a moment. We're going to go to Julie for what's in and what's out in the world of plastic surgery. Julie?
Spas for tiny tots in South Korea and plastic surgery as the hot graduation gift for teens. In what's in and what's out and what's hot and what's definitely not in the world of plastic surgery. I'm your guide, Julie Whitney. Get ready as we tour the world and search the headlines to help you become a younger you. Here's a look at what's hot around the world, from Brazil to Seoul to Dubai to Greece, New York, and almost every place in between. In New York, combination treatments rock. In Toronto, it's natural beauty. In Mumbai, microneedling with PRP is a big hit. In Greece, it's all about speed and accessibility. In Belgium, prejuvenation prevails. In Austria, less equals more. In London, combinations are king. In Vancouver, micro is the new macro. In Dubai, it's Radiesse for neck rejuvenation. In Brazil, it's Ulthrad for collagen stimulation. And in Cincinnati, USA, it's all about the eyes and the advanced facelift. But our friends in South Korea have truly taken skincare and beauty to an entirely new level. Often labeled the beauty capital of the world, the South Korean society places a huge emphasis on the outward physical appearance. And their beauty industry is typically 10 to 12 years ahead of the rest of the world, with beauty stores lining the streets. According to the BBC, South Korea's beauty industry, known as K-beauty, was estimated to be over $13 billion in 2017. But it's not just the adults that are getting beautified. The importance of good-looking skin is ingrained in the Korean culture beginning at a very young age. And children as young as 3 years old are visiting special kiddie spas where they are getting facials, face masks, manicures, and massages. South Korean parents can also buy makeup that's aimed at children, something that has public opinion divided. If South Korea is a decade ahead of us, does that mean we will soon be seeing the same trend here in the US? Big dilemma here. Should I be saving for my child's college education or for their regular facials? And in China, Generation Z has joined the plastic surgery craze, with many high school students ages 17 to 18 seeking plastic surgery this summer following their graduation to look their best before university life starts. Blepharoplasty or eyelid surgery was the most common surgical procedure. Parents are largely supportive as they deem it a way to boost their child's self-confidence. According to the Global Times, an estimated 30 surgeries take place each day at a well-known hospital in East China, and appointments for double eyelid surgeries are booked well into next year. And according to Healthline.com, plastic surgery here in the US is following the same trend as China. In the age of selfies, teens are requesting more plastic surgery, with more than 229,000 teens ages 13 to 19 having cosmetic surgery in 2017, with many requesting it as a graduation gift. Rhinoplasties, commonly referred to as nose jobs, are particularly popular with teens, followed by otoplasty, breast reduction, and skincare treatments. The article says that kids just want to fit in and look more like their peers, and parents say they will do whatever it takes to boost their child's self-confidence. Protruding ears, in particular, can be a cause of incessant bullying to many children. So a simple in-office procedure known as an otoplasty or ear pinning can make a huge difference in a child's self-esteem. That's it for today's news in plastic surgery. You can see more of my plastic surgery journey and also follow your beauty by going to 351face.com. Why not sign up for a younger you today?
We're back. Josh, Mark, thank you guys both for coming in today. We appreciate the information on hair. To our listeners and viewers, thanks for hanging in there if you're still hanging with us. If you do have any questions, you can always go ahead and go to the Follow Your Beauty podcast at 351face/Follow Your Beauty. You can find other episodes as well there. Feel free to sign up and log in for a complimentary consultation. We're happy to help. Josh, you've been on a number of segments. We look forward to having you back. Mark, maybe we'll have you back. I don't know.
No rugs, drugs, or plugs is the last thing I'll say.
Okay, well there you have it.
It's not your booty, it's your beauty.
There we go. Anyway, that's it for today, live from Studio 8 Advanced Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center.